Hello everyone and welcome to my end of the year reading wrap up. End of the year, by which I mean today is the 22nd of December, which I know we still have a few days left in December. However, I am having top surgery tomorrow, so I am having to film this video now because I don't think that I will be in the best kind of mood and in the best kind of energy and in the best place, basically, to film this video before Friday after I've had my top surgery. So that means I'm doing it now. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you my stats, then I'm going to tell you all of the books that I've read, then I'm going to tell you the honourable mentions of my honourable mentions for the faves, and then I'm going to tell you my faves, which are not going to come as a surprise because some of them I haven't talked about very much, but I've talked about most of these to insane extents. So starting with my stats, I have this year read so far 59 books, which is 9 more than my goal. My goal every year is 50 books. I do 50 instead of 52 because I like to give myself some breathing space. Honestly, my goals for reading are less like I have to read this amount of books, and far more like I want to focus more on reading rather than doing other things, like when I get bored and I just start scrolling YouTube. The fact that I have a certain books that I have a goal for makes me then grab a book instead of actually, scrolling YouTube, because I really do love to read. I just don't, if I don't have a goal, I won't bring myself to read, So 59 books, which is 9 more than my goal. Of those, I have read, technically 3 were plays. That's 3. Technically 3 were plays. So some people wouldn't call that, count that as a book, but I would. And then 3 were also graphic novels. And 15 were audiobooks, which is actually far less than I thought. But honestly, of those 15... Oh, no, actually, is that correct? No, I think it's 16. I haven't technically counted very properly, but I think it's 16, actually. Which is actually less than I thought, but actually also very, very interesting because all of those audiobooks were so good. So it's kind of shocking that it's only been 16. Because when I think about my year in reading this year, I really think about those audiobooks. So yeah, all of them very good. I will tell you which ones were audiobooks, and I recommend all of those. And then I also have read 1 Dutch book, which is not a whole lot, and then 3.5 French books. Yeah, I didn't finish the last book, so it's not on my list, and it isn't counted in my final amount of books that I've read. But, if I'm thinking about how much French books I've read, it's technically 3.5. So, and then the rest of them, 55, because 59 minus 4 is all in English, 55 English books. So that is not so surprising. It's actually quite impressive that I've read 4 books that weren't in English, because that is the first time that I've done that in 4 years. I have not read anything other than English in 4 years, which is problematic, especially because I'm not English. Now I'm going to read through all of my books that I've read. I'm just going to read the titles, and then I will tell you my honourable mentions and my faves. Actually, it's the other way around, but yeah. Starting this year, I read Rooftoppers by Catherine Rundell. That is an audiobook. Then I read Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, which was a reread. Then At the Edge of the Universe by Sean David Hutchinson, I think is his name. Then I read Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. Then I read The Crane Wife by Patrick Ness, which was my second to last book of Patrick Ness that I haven't read yet. I've not yet read essays on topics of which I know nothing, something like that. I don't know the title. And there's a new one coming out next year, which I'm very excited about. I think it's called Fire, maybe, or there's fire on the cover or anything, or something like that. So that one I've technically also not read, but would love to read it. Patrick Ness, please send me a fucking arc or something. Because I have 18 subscribers, please send me an arc. I have a full 18 subscribers who I can influence to read your books. Then I read The Umbrella Academy Apocalypse and then The Umbrella Academy Dallas by Gerard Way. Those are like separate, like I think within those titles there were maybe 8 comic books, but they were very short, so I'm counting them as one each. Yeah, and then I read The Magicians by Lev Grossman, which again was an audiobook. Marie by Mark de Bell. Mark de Bell is his name. That was the Dutch book. Neverwild Wake by Marisha Pessel, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I also read The Magician King by Lev Grossman, and then The Magician's Land by Lev Grossman as well. The Magicians, The Magician's King, and The Magician's Land were also all audiobooks, narrated by Mark Bramhall, I think. That was the one that there's 2 narrators, and that was the one that I listened to, and it's not for everyone because he does like the white thing, and at a certain point he has to do an Australian accent, and I've heard that it's apparently horrible, but I love his voice, so that's the one that I would recommend. Then I read My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing, which was an audiobook, which is very good as an audiobook as well. Then I read A Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare. That one was a play, obviously. The Silence of Murder by Dandy Daly McCall. Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. Le Petit Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. That one was horrible. That pronunciation was horrible. Then I read Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, Cain, A Mystery by Lord Byron, also a play. The Sun is Also a Star by Nicolas Youn. I read that one in French. Then You Wouldn't Have Known About Me by Calvin Gimpovich. It's technically like a short story, I think. Then I'm not gonna try saying this name. I read Matthias Haraldson's play. I will link that. I read it in English, of course, translated by Atari Translations. I will link that. You will be able to read that. Then I read the first Harry Potter, also in French. Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Trust in Me by Sophie Mackenzie. The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar by Roald Dahl. That one was an audiobook. The Great Gatsby by John F. Fitzgerald. Mad Love by Susan Selfors. The Circle by Dave Eggers. Stormfront by Jim Butcher. Full Moon by Jim Butcher. Grave Peril by Jim Butcher. Slade House by David Mitchell, also an audiobook. Eragon by Christopher Paolini, audiobook. Infinite Ground by Martin McInnes. The Secret Garden by Francis Hodgson Burnett, audiobook. Last Night in Nuke by Niviaq Corneliuson. Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, audiobook. Nimona by Noel Stevensons. 20s Girl by Sophie Kinsella. The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, audiobook. The Time Traveller's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. And then My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Then, that was a lot. Then I have my honourable mentions. So, honourable mentions. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I read that one as an audiobook, so I can't hold it up, but that one was such a good audiobook. Fucking fantastic. Absolutely. It was my first Brandon Sanderson book, and I couldn't recommend it more as your first. I loved it. It was so good. Then, Have Mercy by Jada Jones and Danielle Bennett. I've already talked about this in one of my Inktober videos. The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. Also very good. I read this because of the movie, and I think it was such a great thing to read. I think it was so fun to see it, especially knowing the movie so well, because I'm totally obsessed with the movie. So knowing the movie and then seeing this, and the movie isn't super true to this, but it's very interesting, the changes that it does make and the things that it keeps. So a great read for that. Stormfront by Jim Butcher. It's an honourable mention because one of the other ones is my favourite. So I felt like I should have, said that this was an honourable mention, just because otherwise it kind of comes out these kind of come out of the blue, like the sequels. So I apparently love sequels much more than first books. Then Raspberries on the Yanks. I have a reading vlog for this one. It's very short. It's about childhood. I had a great time reading this. This one really came out of the blue in how much I enjoyed it. So Couldn't recommend it more, which is something that I said like a million times in that reading vlog. Then, Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. This one's very interesting because I don't like sci-fi, but I loved this one. This one was my first sci-fi that I actually loved, and I loved it so much. And then the last one was also an audiobook, and that was Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. I'm quickly going to just shout out the narrator. I don't know her name, but I will put it somewhere. But I'm just going to shout her out because there are so many female characters in that book. Like, they're all women, and there are very, very many characters, and yet she did it so well. Each voice was so different and so unique and so distinct. Loved that. I really did love that. I think that was such a feat for the audiobook, you know, so that one was great. That's all the honourable mentions. Now on to my favourites. The first favourite I can't hold up. That was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and I listened to it on audiobook. This is a book about, this is the first sci-fi book that I actually loved, because this is also sci-fi. This is basically about a girl who wants to go to this space military school, but her father was a traitor to the space military school, so she can't get in, like nobody will let her in. And so it's about her trying to get in, and then when she's in, it's about her trying to fit in with the group and, like, you know, fighting tooth and nail to get some respect and to actually clear her name of what her father did, basically. Second favourite, also a second book, is The Magician King by Lev Grossman. I listened to this one on audiobook as well, and then afterwards I bought the trilogy because it was amazing. This is a sequel, so I won't tell you what it's about, but The Magicians, which is the first one, is about this guy who is obsessed with Fillory, which is basically Narnia, like Fillory books and Fillory media, and then he goes to a magic school all of a sudden, and he's like at the magic school and he's still obsessed with Fillory, and it's about, like, you know, how real magic, you know, in his universe, real magic, how it compares to Fillory magic, and how he, like, you know, finds a balance between being an actual magician and wanting this fantasy thing that he can't have. So, love this. I love all of these books, and I love the backs as well. There's a third one, but it's still in the box. Then another sequel, we have Shadow Magic by Jada Jones and Danielle Bennett. I can't actually tell you what this one is about because they don't follow the same characters, so I can tell you what this one is about instead of the first one. It kind of follows the aftermath of the war that was happening in the first book, which is this one. But it also kind of follows very specifically two characters and their relationship during the peace talks. And so you've got two characters from one of the countries and then two characters from the other country, and it kind of follows how everything kind of, like, intricately intertwines, and, you know, how you have to be, like, careful but also kind of set your boundaries, but, like, you're in enemy territory, but are you still enemies because you're trying to be peaceful? It's very interesting. Then a book that I have talked about just to death, The Binding by Bridget Collins. I did read this one on audiobook, and I mean, this narrator is, like, I cry just thinking about him. Do not read this. Get this on audiobook. Like, get this on audiobook. I swear to God, get this on audiobook. His name is Carl Prekop. My cat thinks the kisses are for her. No, it's not for you. It's for the narrator. Yes, I did end up buying the book as well just because I wanted to make annotations, but if I could get a physical copy of the audiobook, like, if somehow I could just, like, open the book and listen to it, I would. Yeah, sorry, I'm raving. I think this one probably is my very favourite of the year. These are just in order of when I read them, rather than, like, they're all equally favourite, except this one's probably the most favourite one. She's joining us. This is about a universe in which bookbinding basically binds your memories into a book, and then you don't have to deal with those memories anymore. And it deals with the implications of being able to forget and being able to make other people forget, and how that impacts you and what the consequences of that are. And at the same time, it follows the main character who has been very sick and who now has to basically heal both emotionally and physically, because being sick means he can't go back to work on his farm, and he has to like leave and go live with Binder, and it's a whole thing. And yeah, great book. You Are on My Paper. Grave Peril by Jim Butcher. This one I think I've also already talked about, but I'm not sure. Yes, I have actually. This is the third book in a series, and I do have the first one, which was Stormfront, and I don't have the second one, which is Full Moon, because Full Moon is so bad. It's so bad. It's really, really horrible, but these two are good. This one's my favourite, obviously. This is basically about a supernatural detective. He's a wizard detective, but he, investigates murders that have a supernatural element to them. So, supernatural detective, and he, in this book, is investigating ghosts, because every single title of these books in this series is a horrible, horrible pun. So, Grave Peril, like a grave, and then Stormfront, I actually don't think is a pun. Is it a pun? I don't think that's a pun. But then Full Moon is about werewolves. And then the last one I can't hold up because it was an audiobook, and that was City of Bones, but by Martha Wells instead of by Cassandra Clare. This book suffers from other book with same title is far more popular syndrome, but this one is so much more. But this one is like, I've read the other one. I've read City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. I read City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, but I don't like it. This one is like 10 million times better. It follows some sort of like dystopian new society, a little bit sci-fi as well, and there's a new human race, and it follows a relic dealer who has to help someone find something that's going to kind of do something. They don't actually know what they're trying to find and why, but they know that it's important, and they know that it's very dangerous to look for it, and it just follows them looking for it. And overall, it is just so good. The narrating was really good. It made the character like so likable. The character is a non-human, or he's like part human. He's like a new human. And it really follows the kind of classist system that they live in, the racist system that they live in, and especially also it follows the love that these characters have for history and for finding stuff out about the world. And yeah, I love it. It's so good. It's a real, like, I've never heard of it, but it is so good. And I know Martha Wells wrote something else that people really like. I think Murderbot, I think is what it's called. But this one, I haven't read that one yet, but this one is so good as well. So I would highly recommend it. So those are the books that I have read this year, and I will post this on Friday, so I will by then maybe have finished some other books as well. So if I did, I will put them on the screen and stuff. Yeah, I had a very good reading year for me personally. I had a good time. I had a lot of books read, and I started my YouTube channel, which was really fun as well. So yeah, I'm really pleased with my reading this year, and I think for next year I'm going to focus more on audiobooks, because I've really figured out that that is what makes me happy. Please tell me your favourite books of this year. I would love to hear about them, and I will see you in the next year. But first I will show you my cat. She just crawled on my lap like this. Isn't she just the cutest thing in the entire world? Bye.